Peace be to all the brothers and sisters.
那么今天下午跟大家一起来学习的围篱笆与拆篱笆。
And this afternoon, I would like to share the topic of making a hedge and removing it.
可能你们看这个题目到底要讲什么？
When you see this topic, you may wonder what it's talking about.
因为你们最近在读约伯记，
Recently, we have been reading the book of Job.
等一下我们聚完会以后还要再查考约伯记的第9章。
And after the service, we will continue to study Job chapter 9.
所以我想一想，
So I was thinking about it.
就来讲第1章跟第2章。
So I thought we can talk about Job chapter 1 and chapter 2.
约伯记是一个智慧书。
Job is a wisdom book.
假使我们仔细的去看在圣经里面从约伯记，然后诗篇，再来箴言，再来传道书，再来雅歌，这个是属于智慧书。
The wisdom books in the Bible are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon.
那么在圣经里面这个智慧书，就是说我们今天在读这一些经卷的时候，让我们去得到智慧。
And they are called wisdom books because today when we read them, we can gain wisdom from them.
那么从这个约伯记的讲，我们知道约伯记在讲苦难。
And we know that the book of Job speaks regarding suffering.
而且呢，这个苦难的来龙去脉也是很微妙的。
And the way that it is suffering is very miraculous.
所以呢，人在这个痛苦当中的时候，会有什么的表现？
It shows what type of reaction a person has during suffering.
所以假使我们看约伯记的时候，约伯虽然是表现的在神的眼中看为完全正直，而且呢，敬畏神、远离恶事的人，他碰到问题，他也有那个情绪的一些反应。
And although Job was a righteous person, when he came to suffering, he still had his emotional reaction.
在我们的信徒当中，有时候碰到问题也是会有这种反应。
And this is similar for members today.
但是你在这种反应当中，你怎么样跟神之间的关系，怎么样来去得智慧？
And within our reaction, how can we gain wisdom from the suffering?
所以呢，一般来讲，你在看约伯记的时候，就是说人在受苦当中的时候，我们人的会什么反应？
And so the book of Job shows us what is the reaction that a person has when they are in the middle of suffering.
当你在受苦当中的时候，我们一个信仰好的人的反应就是会去祷告。
And a person who is suffering that has good faith will know to pray.
所以那个诗篇就是在祷告。
So the book of Psalms are prayers.
所以在我们在祷告当中，把我们的苦，把我们的喜乐，什么来赞美神、颂赞神、歌颂神，或是交托神。
In our prayers, we praise God and we cast our burden upon Him.
所以诗篇有150篇。
And Psalms has 150
它那里面
psalms.
的内容相当的丰富。
And the content is very abundant.
假使说我们照现在读经进度，1天1章的话，要读好久才可以把诗篇读完。
For us to continue on our reading schedule, it would take us a long time to finish the entire book of Psalms.
所以有的教会呢，在每个月的读经每天的读经的过程当中，读到诗篇的时候，大概把它分2段或是3段，这样分开再来读，再分开再来读，不然一直读下去的时候，有时候读了，因为它内容很多都很类似的，假使分享分不出来的时候，会感觉到很无聊。
And when many churches are reading the book of Psalms, when they come to it, they often divide it into a couple sections and then further break it down into more sections so that there's more to share about.
但是呢，从这些诗篇里面，我们可以看出来，你在这种困难患难当中，你会懂得去祷告的时候，你就可以得到智慧。
But from the book of Psalms, we can see that when you are in the midst of suffering, if you know how to pray, you will receive strength.
那这个智慧呢，就带过来的，就是箴言了。
And this wisdom is shown in Proverbs.
那么你要在读箴言的时候，你会发现到箴言的每一句一句，在前面的时候，大概10章之前的时候是长篇一点，到了后面，到了一句一句，每一段每一句都是很宝贵的。
And when we come to the book of Proverbs, we will see perhaps the first 10 chapters that there are many sections, and after that, every single sentence is very precious.
所以你要是在读箴言书的时候呢，我们可以看出一个人在痛苦中祷告当中，神给他智慧，然后呢，借着神给的智慧， 然后呢，我们去思想，在世界上所看到的事情，来思想，来得到智慧。
And from Psalms, you receive wisdom, from prayer. And in Proverbs, it shows you how to act it out in your daily life.
然后呢，人呢就借着这个智慧，人家从智慧当中所体会出来那个智慧，我们这个人呢，借着这个智慧，来跟神之间来交通。
And using that wisdom, man communicates with God.
这个就是在这个箴言书里面的他的所讲的这个智慧。
And this is the wisdom that is in Proverbs.
再过来，当你有这些智慧的时候，你懂得去观察的时候，就进入到了传道书了。
And after you have known how to observe your surroundings, and we enter into the book of Ecclesiastes.
你看这个传道书里面，这个传道人是边走边看边讲。
And we see that the preacher in Ecclesiastes, as he is going along, he is observing and speaking.
他从这个智慧当中来分析人间世上的各式各样的事情。
And he uses this book to talk about all matters of life, things in life.
然后借着从这些的智慧里面来看透世上的事。
And using wisdom, he uses that as a lens to look at the things of this world.
这是在传道书里面所讲的。
And this is what Ecclesiastes
所
speaks
以
about.
传道书里面大概可以分前半段跟后半段。
And Ecclesiastes can be divided into the beginning and the end, the
前
latter
半段
part.
大概都讲在日光之下的事情。
The beginning talks about what is under the sun.
到后半段的时候，从日光之下转到日光之上。
And after that, in the latter part of it talks about what is above the sun.
所以说，人得了智慧，就能够看透这个世上的事情。
So using wisdom, you can see through what is in this world.
所以这个是在传道书里面所提出的智慧。
So this is the wisdom that is talking about in Ecclesiastes.
当我们能够看透世界上的人，
When we can see clearly the things of this world,
就能够跟神来有很亲密的交通。
then we can have a very intimate communication with God.
这个就是雅歌里面所讲的。
And this comes to what Song of Solomon is about.
这个是在圣经里面的这个从约伯记一直到雅歌当中的所讲的这个智慧。
And this is how the wisdom is connected from Job to Song of Solomon in the Bible.
那我们今天要跟大家一起分享围篱笆跟拆篱笆。
And today we will discuss the topic of making a hedge and removing the hedge.
来，约伯记到底在哪里有讲说围篱笆拆篱笆？
Where does it record in Job that there is a
来，
hedge
我们
made
看一下
or
约
removed?
伯记第一章。
Let us look at Job chapter 1.
约伯记第一章，我们看第10节。
Job chapter 1, verse 10.
约伯记第一章第10节，你岂不是四面围上篱笆，维护他和他的家，并他一切所有的吗？他所做的多蒙你是福，他的家产在地上增多。11节，
11.
你且伸手毁他一切所有的，他必当面弃掉你。
Job chapter 1, verse 10. Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. 11. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.
好，那我们看到第10节跟11节，你可以看到有没有一个围篱笆，一个拆篱笆？
In verse 10 and 11, can you see a hedge being put up and being taken down?
我们从这个约伯记的第一章，从第1节一直看到这个第9节。
If we look at Job chapter 1 to chapter 9,
尤其在第1节到第8节，这个地方我们可以看出来，就是说神对这个约伯在世上有很多的祝福。
verses 1 through 8 talk about the blessings that Job has received in this world.
你看从第2节说他有7个儿子，3个女儿。
Verse 2 says that he has 7 sons and 3 daughters.
他的家产有7000羊，3000骆驼，500对的牛，500对的母驴，还有许多的仆婢。
He has 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yokes of oxen, and 500 female donkeys.
这个人在东方人中间是为至大的。
This man was the greatest of all the people of the east.
你从这个地方可以看出来，这个在篱笆围在篱笆里面的那种的丰富。
And from these verses, you can see the abundance that you can receive when you are within a hedge.
所以我们看到这里的时候，就知道约伯记里面 约伯记有讲围篱笆的事情啊，
So we can see that Job does discuss the issue of making a hedge.
这个是提高我们在读约伯记的兴趣了。从这围篱笆来看，篱笆里面是怎么样，篱笆外面又怎么样？
And this is something interesting interesting perspective of Job. What is it like within the hedge and outside of it?
啊，这个围篱笆就是神的保护啊。
The hedge is the protection of God.
那么在神的保护，你去领受从神来的福分。
And within the hedge, you will receive your portion from God.
啊，那么呢，假设我们在刚刚开始看的时候，会感觉，哎，这个篱笆一拆掉以后，好像神的保护没有了。
And when we first look at it, we may think that once the hedge is removed, then his protection is gone.
其实神的保护仍然存在。
But God's protection always remains.
但是呢，这个篱笆当中，我们就可以发现到破坏者是谁？
But we can see who is the person that destroys this hedge.
这个破坏者就是撒旦
The destroyer is Satan.
啊。所以有时候我们在看约伯记的时候呢，可以看出两个层面。
So when we look at Job, we can see it in two levels.
一个是在灵界上面的一个层面，
One is in the spiritual realm,
一个是看到地面上的这一面。
and one is what is going on the world.
但是呢，我们可以了解哦，约伯记所描写的约伯，从头到结束，通通是看地面上的。
But for the book of Job, we see that from beginning to end, it focuses on the part that's in the world.
约伯不知道那个上面还有2次的这个天上的会议啊。
Because Job does not know about what has happened in the spiritual meeting in the heavenly realm.
啊，所以那个作者呢，这个写约伯记的作者当中，他在描写这一段的时候，用这个墙，啊，来分隔了在天上的那一段的事情。
Therefore, the author of Job, when he describes what is happening, separates the two realms.
啊，所以他在开始的讲说，约伯呢，他是一个完全正直、敬畏神、远离恶事的人。
Job is described as a person who is blameless and upright, who fears God.
所以约伯这个人，啊，是一个表现相当好的人。
He has very good behavior.
但是啊，这个约伯记写得很奇妙的哦。大概有人在讲说，约伯的这个时代跟亚伯兰的时代差不多。
It is very miraculous because Job is probably around the same time as Abraham.
啊，但是呢，在圣经里面，我们读旧约圣经的时候，神拣选亚伯拉罕。
But in the Old Testament, we can see that God chose Abraham.
但是呢，神在圣经里面却把约伯是乌斯地的，不是神的选民的人，他的这种表现，把它放在这个圣经里面来。
But those that were not within his chosen people, a person in the land of Uz, his behavior or his actions were still recorded in this book.
啊，其实来讲，神不只是说是选民的神啊，神是全世界的神啊。
So God is not only the God of the chosen people, he is the God of the entire world.
啊，那么呢，我们再看这一个约伯，他对他的神的这个信仰的表现是相当的好。
And Job had very good deeds or actions within his faith.
所以呢，因为他有这些好的表现，那神也祝福他。
And because of his actions, God blessed him.
那么在一般呢，我们今天在读圣经的时候，对这个了解的时候，为什么约伯会这么好？因为神有保护他嘛，围墙把他围住嘛。
And when we read the book of Job, we think, why did he have such good behavior? It is because he was protected by this hedge.
哦，所以你可以看到你看他生了10个孩子，
He has 10 children,
7个儿子，3个女儿。
7 sons and 3 daughters.
哦，然后呢，我们可以看到他的财产很多。
And we can see that his possessions were great.
哦，而且呢，人家都很尊重他的。
And many people respected him.
哦，再来这个约伯对他的这个家庭的这个信仰，对他的儿女的这个教育很看重。
And he placed great emphasis on the faith of his children.
哦，你看我们看这个第4节啊，
Let us look at verse 4.
他的儿子呢，哦，按着日期在自己的家里设筵席的时候，就打发人去请，然后请他们的3个姐妹来与他们同吃筵席。你可以看他这个家庭，这个兄弟之间的姐妹之间那种和乐。
From this verse, we can see how harmonious the children are in his family.
啊，所以呢，你可以看他又有钱，兄弟姐妹又好，哇，这世上我们认为好的东西，哎，在约伯家里都有。
So he had great wealth and he had a harmonious family. We can say that everything that is good in this world, Job had.
啊，但是呢，这个做父亲的很重视他这个儿女的这个宗教教育。
But yet, as a father, he placed great emphasis on the religious education of his children.
那第5节这里说这个筵席的日子过了以后，约伯就打发人叫他们 自节他们清早起来就按着他们的人数众人的数目来献上燔祭，因为他们恐怕说我的儿子犯了罪，心中弃掉了神。
And Job would send and sanctify his children and rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts.
那圣经说耶伯常常这样做。
And the Bible says, Thus Job did regularly.
好，那我们看了这一段里面，在围墙之内的这一段里面的这个描写。
We see the description here that is within the hedge.
其实我们看圣经有很多的角度可以去学的地方。
And when we are reading the Bible, we can look at it from many different
我们今
perspectives.
天门神的祝福，好像神用围篱笆把我们围起来。
Today, when we receive blessings, it is like we are being protected by a hedge that God has
那
put
我们
around us.
的家成为一个门户的家庭。
And we can say that our family is a family that has blessings.
那么在一个门神门户的家庭里面，我们怎么样去经营、去建立我们这个家庭？
And within the blessings of God, how do we establish or build up this family?
其实，在约伯记从第2节一直看到了这个第5节的当中，可以给我们去学习。
Verses 1 through 5 can give us many teachings to learn from.
你可以看这个约伯，他对儿女的这个宗教信仰，对儿女的这个拜神的这些事情上多么看重。
We can see how highly Job regarded the importance of religious education for his children.
所以呢，在这里面我们可以看得出来说，今天我们在神的围墙的里面的时候，我们今天要做什么事情？
So we can see from here the things or the actions we should do when we are within a hedge.
因为什么时候篱笆会拆掉，我们不知道啊。
Because we don't know at any time this hedge can be removed.
但是呢，我们可以看约伯他篱笆还没拆以前，他所做的事情，他是多么的重视他的这个家庭的宗教教育。
But before the hedge was removed, we can see how he placed great emphasis on the religious education of his family.
所以这个就是我们今天活在这个世上，我们为人长辈的里面我们要好好的把我们这个信仰好好的传承给我们的下一代。
So for us living in this world today, it is very important for us to pass down our faith to the next generation.
将来有一天围墙拆掉了，
One day the hedge may be removed.
那碰到问题的时候怎么办？
When you face difficulty, what will you do?
假使我们有好好的做的话，心里很平安，不会难过的。
If you have done what you should have done and done what is right, then your heart will be at peace.
OK， 好，我们再继续看这第1章的第六节说，有一天那神的众子侍立在神的面前啊，撒旦也来到他的当中。
And verse 6 says, Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them.
然后呢，神就问撒旦。
And the Lord said to Satan,
我们从第1章跟第2章里面，我们可以看见神问撒旦问2次。
We can see in chapters 1 and 2 that the Lord asked Satan the same question twice.
第7节说，第1章第1节，神就问撒旦说：“你从哪里来？”
The Lord asked Satan, Where do you come from?
那撒旦就说：“我是从地上走来走去，走来往返而来的。”
Satan answered, From going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it.
这一段在告诉我们什么？
This section tells us,
我们人活在这个世上，
for us living in this world,
新约圣经讲说，这个地球是掌握在那个恶者的手上。
it tells us, the New Testament tells us that the world is within the control or hand of Satan.
那撒旦在这个地上走来走去的。
And Satan is roaming around the world.
那彼得前书第5章他也讲说，魔鬼好像吼叫的狮子，遍地游行，要寻找可吞吃的人。
And 1 Peter tells us that Satan is roaming around the world, seeking for those he can devour.
我们可以在约伯记里面有看到一个这么完全、这么好的人，魔鬼要攻击他的。
And in Job, we see such a righteous and a good person is the target for Satan's attack.
魔鬼要攻击他，假使没有神的同意，魔鬼根本就没有办法碰他。
For Satan to attack him, that means that God would have to allow this or it would not be possible.
所以这些问题，我们要用脑筋去想。
Therefore, we must think about this
我
question.
们在读圣经的时候，要读得出来。
When we are reading the Bible, we need to ponder about this.
今天我们信徒有时候碰到患难、碰到苦难、碰到一些我们不想碰到的事情。
Today, many of our members face with difficulties and sufferings that we don't want to face.
那时候我们就发现到有两种，我们的信徒有2种反应。
At this time, there are two different reactions of the members.
一种呢，就是信仰比较不好，就在那里抱怨埋怨，为什么是我？为什么不是他？我都做得这么好，为什么是我？常常在那里埋怨神。
The first reaction is to complain, why is it me and not that person? I'm such a good person.
那另外一种信仰比较好的呢，说碰到这种事情的时候，
And the second type of member who has better faith,
他在很痛苦的当中，
in the midst of their suffering,
他就在思想神。
they will think of God.
假使没有神的同意，我是不会碰到的。
If God did not allow this, I would not be facing this today.
碰到的状况都一样，
We all face the same
一个是
situation.
埋怨，
But one will complain,
一个是懂得是能够信靠神，说若不是神同意，我不会碰到。
and the other will know that if it were not for God, I would not meet with this, so they would know to rely on
其
God.
实像这种的问题，约伯记就告诉你答案。
And for this type of situation, Job tells us the answer.
那么神就问撒旦说：
God asks Satan,
你有没有看到？你看看你在网上有没有看到？我们看这个第8节。
let us look at verse 8.
神就问撒旦说：你曾用心查看我的仆人约伯没有？
Have you considered my servant Job?
在地上再没有人像他完全正直、敬畏神、远离恶事。
That there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil.
这段话很有意思啊。
This phrase is very
神对约伯的一个
meaningful.
肯定，
This is an affirmation that God gives of Job.
神肯定，并不表示就魔鬼就不敢去挑战。
Just because God affirms Job doesn't mean that Satan cannot attack him.
所以魔鬼会来抗议会来控告，会来挑战。
So Satan will come and challenge God.
所以呢，有时候在我们的教会当中，我们发现到，某些人信仰很好，怎么搞得会碰到这种事情？
And sometimes in church we will see some people who have very good faith and we wonder why they meet with certain situations.
你要是看到这个约伯他碰到的这个事情，是很惨的。
If we look at all the very disastrous things that happened to Job,
后来这个魔鬼就跟神，就是等于说是跟神控告了，
at the
抗议
end,
了。
it is because Satan had challenged God.
我们看第9节，
Let us look at verse
那撒
9.
旦就回答神说约伯敬畏神，岂没有缘故啊？
Satan answered God and said, Does Job fear God for nothing?
第10节说就是因为岂不是你四围把他用篱笆把他围起来吗？保护他吗？他的家和他一切所有的他所做的都蒙你的祝福啊。
Verse 10, Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands and his possessions.
他的家产在地上是这么多
He has so many possessions in the world.
所以呢，撒旦就跟神来抗说，这样子啦，就跟神挑战了。假使你把它拆，你把这个围墙把它拆掉的话，
Therefore, Satan protested to God that if you just remove this hedge,
这个一拆掉以后，他所有的东西通通没有。
as soon as you remove that hedge and take away everything he
你再看
has,
他，你再看这个约伯，看是不是完全正直敬畏神，远离恶事，看他是不是这样子的人。
then you can see if he will still be a blameless person who is upright and fears God.
所以在这一段里面，有时候就给我们可以一个思想一件事情。
So this section gives us something to ponder upon.
我们常常看到，有时候我们的信徒会遭遇到一些困苦患难，或是不愿意碰到的事情。
We will see that members will meet with difficulties that they do not want to face.
当他碰到一些问题的时候，我们会想说奇怪，他平常对神在对教会各方面表现都这么好，为什么会这样子？
When they face problems, we will wonder, they have such good behavior or actions in church, how come they are facing this?
开始的时候是存在心里面。
In the beginning, this will be a thought that is within our
你要
heart.
看到约伯开始了以后，到第2次来的时候，状况越来越差的时候，那个人的这个想法就不一样了。
In Job, we can see that as his suffering increases, that his thoughts change.
所以你看这个一个篱笆被拆掉了以后，魔鬼就来攻击他的时候，碰到那种惨状的时候，你可以发现到，我们人在看这件事情的时候的看法，有时候就会偏掉了。
That after the hedge has been removed and he has lost everything, then we can see that man's thoughts can change.
我会花很多时间在看约伯记。
I spend a lot of time looking at Job.
约伯记也不是好念的了，也不是很容易的了。
It is not a very easy book to read.
我们只是抓住重点，把它抓住，不要偏掉就对了。
As long as we can grasp onto the main points,
你再看那个3个朋友，
when we look at the three friends,
约伯那个3个朋友，你说有没有爱心啊？
can we say that the three friends have love?
很有爱心啊！
They have great love.
他看到约伯这样事情，陪他做7天7夜啊，
When they saw his suffering, they sat with him for 7 days and 7
坐
nights.
在那里看到他这种状况，讲不出话来呀、
They saw his suffering that was so great that they could not speak.
结果呢，在脑子里一直在想说为什么，为什么，为什么，为什么，常常为什么。
And in their minds, it kept repeating, why?
结果呢，他把个人对于这个人世间的事情的看法，他的认为的真理，就把它用出来。
And then during this time, as they considered why, each of the friends spoke out what their concept was of the world.
就好像当我们神在用围墙围住我们的那个围墙，把它拿掉，让别人要魔鬼来攻击我们的时候，碰到这种状况的时候，有时候身体、物质，连精神上都受到攻击。
If the hedge is removed by God and Satan is allowed to attack us, we will not lose only our wealth and our possessions, but sometimes even mentally we will suffer.
这个三个朋友是来帮助他的。
These 3 friends came to help him.
今天假使我们的朋友生病了，
Today, if our friend was sick
落魄了，
and was ill,
你愿意去看他吗？
would you want to go visit?
这耶稣是跟我们讲你在穷苦、困苦、患难的时候，你不要到朋友的家里去人家会讨厌你
Proverbs tells us that when you are in suffering, do not go to your friend's house because they will hate you.
你要是看这个世上的事情你有钱的时候朋友很多你要是没有钱的时候，困苦患难的时候，人家看到你好像看到鬼一样逃之夭夭跑
For those who are in the world, when you are in prosperity, you will have many friends, but when you are in suffering, then all your friends will flee.
这个是世界上就是这样子。
This is how the world is.
但是这个三个朋友来陪他。
But these 3 friends came to accompany him.
陪他7天。
They accompanied him for 7 days.
后来在那里再想来想去，想到最后的结果呢，用人的方法来处理。
And they kept thinking in their minds, and in the end, they used man's method to resolve this issue.
那我们要读约伯记的时候，会感觉到好像这个三个朋友好像是被神骂了嘛他说他这个好像讲错话了。
In the end, we know that God yelled at the 3 friends for speaking the wrong words.
但是我要告诉各位他的三个朋友讲的话都是对的
But all the words of the 3 friends were correct.
我们不要以为说他这三个朋友讲的是讲错话
We should not think that what the 3 friends spoke was wrong.
通通对。
They were all correct.
只是方向错误。
But the direction was not correct.
用错方法。
They used the wrong method.
约伯他受到这个是神允许给魔鬼去攻击他的。
What Job was encountering was suffering that was allowed by God.
但是他不懂得这一幕。
But the 3 friends did not understand this.
结果本来是要安慰他的，结果变成是攻击他。
And they came originally to encourage him, but ended up attacking him.
也从约伯记里面，我们可以看出来，神要操练约伯，要让他更好的时候，用这个三个朋友，从精神方面让他约伯受比肉体的痛苦还要痛苦。
We can see from Job that when God allowed Job to suffer, he allowed the 3 friends to come and to give him a mental suffering, a suffering that was greater than his physical torment.
你要看到最后面的到约伯记要结束的时候，你可以看出来神的作为是超乎我们人的想象。
At the end of Job, we see that the works of God are far beyond what man can think or understand.
所以你要看到第一次的时候呢，这个围墙一拆掉的时候，说神对于这个魔鬼，你要破坏这个要来伤害约伯的时候，神有下条件的。
We see that when the hedge was first removed, when God allowed the hedge to be removed, He gave criteria to Satan.
在第1章跟第2章各下一次条件。
He gave criteria to Satan the first time and the second time.
来第1章的，我们看这第12节。
In chapter 1, verse 12.
那神对这个撒旦说：“还他所有的都在你的手中，只是不可伸手加害于他。”
Verse 12. Behold, all he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person.
所以这个第一次撒旦向神来抗议的时候，要求神把这个篱笆拿掉，拆掉这个篱笆的时候呢，那神也同意，但是告诉撒旦，你攻击他可以将他所有的，你可以去处理他，但是你不可伸手加害约伯。
The first time that Satan came to protest and asked that the hedge be removed, God approved of this request, but he said that you cannot lay a hand on his person.
我们再看第2章的第6节。
Let us look at chapter 2, verse 6.
那么神第2次跟撒旦来下了第2个限制。
And this is the second time that Satan came to the Lord.
因为第一次的撒旦去攻击约伯的时候呢，约伯没有失败
The first time that Satan attacked Job, Job did not fail.
啊，所以在这个第一章的21节，他说：“我赤身而来，我赤身出于母胎，也是赤身要要归回。赏赐是神，收取是神，神是应当称颂的。”
Chapter 1, verse 21, and he said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
所以有时候我们在想，神要操练人，要让我们人更好的时候呢，那种神同意给魔鬼来攻击我们的那种的程度是越来越重。
When God allows us to suffer, then the level of the suffering can increase.
第一阶段里面把所有的东西拿掉的话，约伯还在颂赞神。
In the first phase, when all our possessions are removed, Job was still able to praise God.
那第二阶段的时候，那撒旦呢就想要攻击他的身体了。
And the second level, when Satan wanted to attack Job's body.
但是呢，神同意撒旦去攻击他，但是神下条件。
God agreed to this, but he placed a criteria on it.
那第二章的第2节说，神就对撒旦说：“他在你的手里，只要存留他的性命神给他条件，他在你的手里，你不可以杀害他，他的性命要留住，其他随你。”
In chapter 2, verse 6, the Lord said to Satan, Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life.
你可以看出这个约伯这第二次的撒旦的抗议，这个伤害那个精神、肉体的痛苦有多痛苦。
And we can see that from the second attack of Satan, how painful was this attack, because God allowed Satan to do anything that he wanted to, besides taking away
结果
his
呢，
life.
约伯呢，从脚掌一直到这头顶都长了毒疮。
Therefore, Job was struck with painful boils from the sole of his head to the crown of
那
his
约伯
head.
呢，坐在炉灰当中，用那瓦片在刮他身体上面，刮他的身体。
And Job sat there with a shard of potsherd and scraped himself.
那个破坏口收回，又爆开伤口，那种化脓什么东西在用在灰烬当中在那里刮，你看到那种是真的是好可怜的。
When you can see the scene of a person who's scraping away the pus of their boils, which continues to keep rupturing, we can see how pitiful the scene is.
到了第9节2章的第9节这个看法就，我的看法可能跟别人的看法不一样。
Chapter 2, verse 9, my perspective of it may be different from yours.
那在2章第9节说，他的妻子就对他说：“你仍然持守纯正吗？你弃掉神死了吧。”
And his wife said to him, Do you still hold to your integrity? Curse God and die.
所以有人在看这一段的时候，我在看很多资料里面，很多人都在骂约伯的太太。这个约伯太太实在是很过分。
And when you look at a lot of reference materials, a lot of people look negatively upon Job's wife for what she has said.
但是我对我的看法可不一样。我说这个约伯的太太到这个时间点才讲这个话，真的是了不起啊。
But my perspective is different, because I think for her to say this after so much has passed already, this means that she is also not an easy person.
那第一次的时候，他儿女都死掉了，东西都被抢光了，他太太都没有吭声哦。
In the beginning, when they lost all their possessions and all their children died, his wife did not say anything.
10个孩子是她怀孕生的哦。
The 10 children are those that she was pregnant with and gave
一天
birth
就死
to.
掉了，她没有埋怨哦。
She lost them in one day, and she did not complain.
今天，假使不要说10个啦，只要10个当中的一个，我们还是要碰到像这种状况的时候，你会这样像约伯的太太这么静吗？安静吗？连吭一声都没有。
For us today, if it was not 10 of our children, but just one of them, would we be who faced this type of situation? Would we be able to be silent like Job?
他后来再看到他约伯的这个身上长这样的时候，他的那种爱丈夫的心，感觉到，所以他讲出的这个话。我不认为说他是在埋怨神，我不认为是这样子。
And finally, she sees the pain that her husband is in as he is scraping his boils, and then she says these words. So I do not think that they are words of complaint against
不
God.
容易啊，这个约伯的太太不容易，到这个时间才讲这个话，不容易啊。
It is not easy for her to be able to hold on up until this point.
我们将心比心，我们将心比心。
If we compare ourselves,
假使我们碰到像约伯这样的时候，
if we were like Job,
你做太太的人，
if you are the wife,
你能够不抱怨吗？
would you not
你做得
complain?
到吗？
Would you be able to do that?
很难哦。
It is very difficult,
约伯的太太做得到
but his wife was able to.
啊，所以有时候我们看还是换一点宽容的心比较好了，不要把约伯的太太一支竹竿就要把他打死掉。
So we should sometimes have a more merciful heart and not just condemn Job's wife.
但是从这个苦难的角度上来看，约伯的太太讲这个话来讲呢，你要是再从另外角度来想的话，就神借的约伯的太太讲这个话，来让约伯受更多的苦，那种是精神上的苦，来体会到约伯的那一种，后来得到神的那个祝福的有那个互动的关系啊。
And if we look at it from another perspective, God also allows Job's wife to say these words in order to serve as a further mental suffering for Job, which later on we can see has its results in his blessing.
所以这个在我在读这一段的时候，可能有人认为我相信也有人不接受我这种看法了。
And I know some people don't have the same opinion of this verse.
啊，所以在第10节约伯就讲他太太了。
In verse 10, Job responds to his
你这个
wife,
遗忘的妇人啊，
"You speak as one of the foolish
难道我
who
们
speaks.
从神得福也不受祸吗？
Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept
啊，在
adversity?"
这一切事上，约伯不以口来犯罪。
And all this, Job did not sin with his lips.
啊，这一段话，其实你要读到后一段话，我们也可以体会得到，他的太太会讲这个话，其实也有神的工作在他太太的身上。
From this verse, we can see that for his wife to say these words, it also was a work of God through her words.
从他太太讲的这句话来衬托出这个约伯的对神的那种的伟大。
From her words, Job was able to speak these words of how he believed in God.
我们从神的手里得福，也不也是从神那里得到祸吗？受祸吗？
We receive good from God, and do we not also receive adversity from God?
所以你看，从这一个篱笆一拆掉了以后，的那个苦难的这个对约伯来讲，肉体的、精神的一层一层一直加过来。
And once the hedge was removed, we can see layer of suffering was added on, from material suffering and then to physical and mental.
当然，约伯也有讲了很多咒诅他的生日啦，
And Job also cursed his birth.
所以约伯在痛苦当中，人性在困苦当中也是会有一些情绪上的反应，是很正常的啦。
It is very natural when man is suffering to have emotional reaction.
其实我在读约伯记的时候，有时候会想到，我们尤其是做教会在牧养信徒或是访问信徒的时候，尤其是碰到困苦患难病毒的信徒在那个痛苦当中，在抱怨或讲了我们认为没有造就的话的时候，其实我们对他的这种的表现，我们应该要有一个接纳度。
This made me think that when we go to visit our members who are in suffering or are ill, and they speak words that are venting their emotions, we should be able to accept these words, although we may, from what we hear, it does not sound that edifying.
而不是在责备他，你没有信心，你认为怎么这样用责备的口气，我认为这个真的要很小心了。
Do not rebuke them that you do not have faith, and be very careful about this.
所以呢，你看呢，在第3章以后，约伯开始就咒诅他的生日了。
And starting from chapter 3, Job curses his birth.
他说真的，你要想想看，他这么苦的时候，假如说今天是我们碰到这么苦的时候，我们宁愿说我们不要活在这个世上。
And he is in such suffering that he would rather not live in this world.
所以呢，在这个约伯记里面，给我们真的是可以很多思想这一方面的这个要去学习的地方。
This gives us a lot to ponder and to learn from.
太太骂了，讲了完还不够还不算
It wasn't enough that his wife said those words.
爱他的朋友3个人来到的时候，跟他陪他做7天。
Then 3 friends came and sat with him for 7 days.
结果你知道吗？后来跟着下来，这个3个朋友讲的话呢，伤害约伯比他的这个魔鬼在他身上所下的那个生理的痛苦还要痛。
And the pain of the words of his 3 friends was worse than the pain on his own body from Satan.
所以我们在看约伯记的时候，要看出一些东西出来了。
So when we read Job, we need to see certain things
啊，你看这个3个朋友的表现，
from how the three friends acted.
它是一个爱心的表现。
They acted out of love.
结果呢，爱心到最后呢是加重约伯在精神上、肉体已经痛苦，加上精神上的痛苦。
But their acts of love caused greater pain to him mentally.
所以，我们今天要在教会里面做访问工作，在访问信徒啦，到医院啦，在病痛的当中去看信徒、去访问信徒的时候，我们这个讲话要很小心呢。
Therefore, when we are doing pastoral or visitation work today, we need to be very careful when we are speaking to members.
这是约伯记里面给我们的智慧呢。
This is a wisdom that we can
我
learn
们
from
不要乱
Job.
讲话呢。
Don't speak casually.
啊，有一次我去香港，
One time I went to Hong
啊，
Kong.
这件事情我可能在这边我也讲过，也不一定哈。
I may have shared this before.
那个香港的一个朱长老娘跟我讲，
There was Elder Zhu's wife said to me,
他已经主耶稣把他召回去了。
she has been called back by the Lord already.
那时候有一次我去到香港，
One time I went to Hong
他
Kong
就跟我讲一件事情，
and she said something to me.
他说我们有一个信徒在医院里面已经昏迷了。
We have a member who is already unconscious in a coma in the hospital.
啊，他们香港教会有2个姐妹就去到医院去访问去看她，
And we have 2 sisters who went to the hospital to visit her.
本来要去安慰她，要去帮忙祷告的。
Originally, they went to comfort her and to pray with
可
her.
能大家彼此之间，因为香港教会也不大嘛，信徒之间大家很熟的，看很多事情看多了，了解多了以后，看她怎么搞的，现在已经昏迷了。
And they are from a small church, so everybody knows the matters in each other's lives, and they saw her in this condition.
本来是安慰她，要去帮她祷告的，
Originally, they went to comfort and to pray with
一
her,
看她昏迷了，
and they saw she was
哎
unconscious.
呀，跟约伯的那3个朋友差不多了。
And they became similar to Job's 3 friends.
他说他今天为什么会这样子？一定是什么，哇！结果2个人在定他的罪啊。
And they started talking about how come she's in this situation today, she must have done this or that, and they basically condemned her as a sinner.
后来那个长老娘跟我讲，
And that deacon's wife
这
told
个是
me,
这种经验是很难得的经验。
and this was a very valuable
他说
experience.
人要是在医院里面躺着昏迷的时候，你不要乱讲话。
She said that if a person is unconscious in the hospital, do not speak rashly.
视觉、味觉，那些会消失到听觉是最后是听觉。
Even though you have lost other senses or your ability to do other things, hearing is the last to
哇，
go.
那2个人在他面前说，那个广东话的阴公啊，什么，那个就开始就在数落他的不是啊。
And the friends had stood there in front of her talking about the things she had done wrong.
后来那2个人就回去了。
And those 2 sisters went home.
结果呢，那位病在医院的姐妹好了。
And at the end, the sister in the hospital got better.
要是有人讲笑话说，因为他骂得太凶了，所以他气得后来又活过来，他不愿意死活过来，来找着那2个算账。
Some people joke that the 2 condemned her too harshly, that she was so angry that she woke up to pay them back.
后来这个就来到这个姐妹昏迷这个姐妹后来好了，就来到教会，
And the sister who was unconscious recovered and returned to church.
心里很不平静，
Her heart
很
was
生气，
very angry.
来到教会就找那2个姐妹。
And as soon as she came to church, she came to look for those 2 sisters.
某某人啊，
She said
你为什么骂我？
to the sister, "Why did you yell at me?"
那2个都对说，你为什么骂我？你为什么跟我说了那很不好听的话？
Why did you say those things about me?
那个就哪里有？没有啊，哪里有？我哪里有讲你？
And the sister said, "No, I didn't say that."
他说怎么没有？
She said, "Did you
我
not?"
在医院的时候躺在那边的时候呢，你在我的面前在骂我，骂得好难听啊！
When I was in the hospital, when I was there, you were yelling, you were saying all these very negative things about me.
所以有人在讲说，可能是他讲得太难听，气得半死，他想要报复，所以后来又让他活过来了。
And so that's why people say that because they said those things that were wrong about her, she was so angry she woke up.
当然不是这样子的，
And of course, that's
主耶稣
not
让他活了。
the reason God actually let
后来
her
他
live.
就指责说，你在医院的时候讲什么，你以为我昏迷啊？我耳朵都听得到呢。
And after she came back, she told them that you thought I was unconscious, but I could hear everything that you said.
后来才知道说， 访问信徒，你不要看他昏迷的，你就在前面乱讲话是不可以的。
And so after this, we learned that if you are visiting a member, don't think that if they're unconscious, you can say anything you would like in front of them.
那约伯的3个朋友还好了，是约伯还醒着，还可以辩论了，说在那里彼此辩论了。
And for Job's situation, his 3 friends were able to speak to him because he was
所以
able to respond.
约伯的那3个朋友跟约伯在那辩论当中，也得到很多的，给我们得到一些的智慧。
And during the time when they were debating with him, we can learn a lot from their wisdom.
所以呢，我们在这个约伯记里面拆墙跟这个当中我们可以看得到约伯这3个朋友给他受更多的苦。
From this removing of the hedge, we can see that the 3 friends who came caused him even greater suffering.
所以呢，我们在这个读约伯记的时候我们就从这个角度慢慢的拆围墙了以后，会碰到很多的事情。其实这些也是神在操练我们，让我们能够成为精进更完美的神的一种的操练的方式。
And we see that after the hedge is removed, all the various difficulties that come, it is for God to test us and to refine us so that we'll become better.
那我们在讲他后来他不是死了10个孩子吗？
Job had lost 10 of his children.
那么在约伯记到最后面，不是后来神就祝福他双倍吗？
At the end, we can see that God blessed him double.
这个我们，所以有人在讲说，神哪里祝福他有双倍？
And people say, how was he blessed double?
因为后来约伯又生了10个孩子啊。
Because at the end, he also had 10 children.
到了42章那里面不是讲吗？后来约伯也生了在这个42章的第13节说，他也有7个儿子跟3个女儿啊。
In chapter 42, verse 13, it says he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters.
那圣经里面不是祝福说给他双倍吗？
But how was this a double of what he had before?
所以有人说没有啊。
Some say, no, that didn't happen.
但圣经讲话是绝对是对的。
But what the Bible says is true.
为什么？
Why?
因为他前面的10个3个女儿7个儿子，不是死掉了吗？
Because his original 10 children that had already died.
因为约伯常常劝他们要洁身自好，要献燔祭，所以呢，从我们的角度来看，从圣经的角度来看，他应该得救。
So, because Job often reminded them not to sin and offered offerings on their behalf, we know that they were saved.
后来，另外的这个10个孩子，再加上已经离开世上的这个4个孩子，那加起来不是双倍吗？
And now he has 10 additional children, so that is double of how many children he had before.
其实，在这个角度是看到这个得救不得救的问题，是要看后面，不是看在世上的这个的数字了。
So we need to look at it from the perspective of salvation, not the number in the world.
所以呢，我们从这个约伯记里面，从他围墙内跟围墙外的这个过程当中，来彰显这个受苦受难的那种真谛出来。
And from when we look at Job, we can look at the hedge, the making of the hedge and the removing it, the various levels of suffering.
所以我们在最近你们正在读这个约伯记的时候，你就朝这个角度去看它。
So this is a perspective we can use as we are studying the book of
你
Job.
在看约伯记的时候，不是只是单单在字面上只有这样在看，
When you study Job, do not just read the words.
看进去一点。
Look deeper into it.
去思考他在这里面讲的这一段话里面，不管是对的讲对的或讲错话，在两边在对抗当中，他讲的这个东西里面要给我们得到什么智慧？
As the 2 sides are debating, we can try to understand what is the wisdom that we can gain from this.
这个是我们在读约伯记的一个很重要的一个观念。
This is a very important concept as we are studying the book of Job.
所以呢，这个观念要是把它建立起来以后，在读约伯记的时候，你可能你的领悟力在对约伯记的领悟力，就跟现在之前你所读的约伯记的感觉都不一样。
And if we look at it from this perspective, we will have a different, we will gain different things than before.
好，等一下我们再查第9章。
And now, later on, we will continue to talk about Job
我们来
chapter
唱诗。
9. Let us sing him.
402首。
402.